accomplishments and the titles that she has under her name. She's also a life coach, which I really think she's taken a strategic curve to dealing with women as a structure, because I believe that you being a life coach really just delves into parts and aspects that not everyone is able to deal with. And I really think that that's really a strategic way to because I think many times women are dealt with in practical ways, right? But to have practical and psyche and the psychological part of things blended together, I really think that that's really something working. It works. So I'm happy to have you with me today. Welcome.
Thank you, Asemahle. And I'm just really honored to be a part of your conversation. I know that, what you're doing through Peace Jam SA and just globally is inspiring. It's inspiring for me to be a woman in a generation ahead of yours, and just seeing you as a young woman coming through and having these types of conversations. So it's a beautiful blend of different voices. So thank you so much. I'm really excited, been very expectant.
Thank you so much. So in today's today's conversation, we're talking about womanhood and breaking down stereotypes around womanhood. Right, and I believe that it's important for us to know the stereotypes and the boundaries and the boxes that we're put in, so that it becomes easier for us to break free and to find ways in which we can function and work within those things, right? And sorry about that. We live in a society that is constantly changing, and rightfully so, because change is what is needed for growth and many things to be productive. And it comes, it gives us the space to adapt and to adjust and rebuild our lives according to that change. And it goes without saying that the women that come before you dealt with different challenges and were in different spectrums of life, and different from what you had to deal with growing up, right? So I'd like to know, my first question is, how did you, growing up, right, how did you identify being woman with? How did you see and identify what being woman is? And of course, based on what you see growing up and the kind of woman that raised you and the kind of woman that your mom was, and how have you linked the two, the kind of woman that you are now and the kind of woman that your mom was when you're growing up, and how have you redefined and rediscovered womanhood for yourself now, outside of anything that your mom has ever told you, because you are your own woman now, and how have you just really rediscovered and
Thank you. It's actually such a beautiful question, and I really feel a pertinent one. As I'm entering my 40s as a woman, I think you start in your 20s and you have these ideals, and they're beautiful. It's the start of the journey, but I think I realized very quickly, we talk about role models and the importance of role models, which I think are incredibly important in our lives. As you said, they're the women, incredible people that have gone ahead of us, and are these role models. And I think our moms are, or that closest caregiver is the closest role model to what a wife, a woman, a mother is to us. And, I think that's modeled for us at a very young age. I grew up in a very traditional Afrikaans household. So there was that cultural norm of understanding the place of a woman in the house. My mum was very English, and she quickly slipped into this really kind of, I don't want to say negatively submissive, but understanding her place in the household. And I think that, you watch this as a little girl, and it really kind of shapes your identity and your reality of understanding what is possible as a woman, what your role is. And I really kind of entered my 20s, I think, modeling a lot of that the good girl, understanding your place, but not understanding the power of my voice. And it's been an interesting journey, coming through my 20s, working, getting married, and then having a little girl of my own. And I think that cycle, that circle is almost completed, because you're going back to that space where you now need to understand, what am I modeling as a mother to my daughter? And Lily is 11, and she's my biggest teacher. And she's shown me, really, I feel like I'm standing now almost in the space where I'm the bridge between my mum, who's in her 70s, and Lily's, who's coming into her own, coming into her teenagehood, and really realizing that, redefining what it means to be a woman, and what do I want to model and show Lily, what it means to, be strong. What does that look like? The stereotypes, we talk about, that have been placed on women, I think that have a voice, that you're overbearing, or, I think it's understanding this idea of feminine leadership and what that looks like. And that's really, for me, a passion at the moment, is to understand that, having a voice, and really coming into your own and understanding your power as a woman. We talk about reclaiming your power. I think if you truly understand who you are and what those strengths are, and you step into that, that is really your power as a woman. And I'm seeing that for Lily at 11, and I'm only seeing my mother discovering that at 72.
Wow.
And so I think, our parents' generation, they really were in a position where I think there were different expectations for women. I think we've been privileged to be in a generation where we can do everything and anything. But I still think that, Lily's in a generation now where she's almost one step further, where these types of conversations are setting a different reality for her as a woman, entering the world that she is in. So, yeah, I hope that answers your questions. We can happily discuss that in more detail. But
Beautiful.
yeah, thank you.
That's beautiful, and I'm getting excited. um, on Lily, talking about Lily, your little girl, right?
Yes.
And understanding that the way that your mom brought you up is different from how you identify as a woman, right? And understandably so, because times are different, and societies are, as I did mention, is constantly changing, right? So it's important for us to constantly adapt and restructure our lives according to what is now, right?
Yes.
So with Lily, how have you portrayed femininity and being woman to her? Also, considering the fact that we live in a society that is in constant battle of what a woman should be, what a woman shouldn't be, right? And also in your parenting, I believe maybe you do understand that she may grow up one day and actually not even incorporate your teachings, right? Because she's gonna grow out to be her own woman, and she's gonna view the world in her own perspective, right? So how do you portray femininity and being woman to her, and
It's
considering
such
that
a
she's fairly young and she's gonna grow out to be, yeah.
It's such a beautiful question. And I think something that's really brought perspective is, I've got a little boy that's 7, and just seeing how our parents, and seeing that actually at one point there were double standards, and it was very subliminal. It's not an obvious sense where you are obviously creating a double standard, but catching myself thinking, well, why am I allowing
What
my
the
son
difference, yeah.
to be brave and climb that wall, and yet there's this expectation for Lily to be a certain way and act a certain way, and it didn't include climbing up that tree, and just seeing that, all of that role model and parenting, which was beautiful. And I believe, as parents, I can say you do the best you can with what you have at the time, but times
Yeah.
change. And, having this realization, I think for me, in realizing that Lily, the way that I'm talking to her about certain subjects, things she can and can't do. You know, how is she understanding her femininity, but also her strengths and her power and her ability to be brave, and not to talk that down. Because I think the language we use, I heard an incredible phrase, was the language we
How?
use is the words that we use is the house that we live in, and just being very conscious of how I'm encouraging my son versus my daughter and the words that I'm using. And you know, I think that was quite a wake up call for me in realizing that, and also understanding my own journey as a woman and understanding, you know, coming into that place of that feminine leadership. I think things have changed in the boardroom. You know, my mother was my earliest role model. I think growing into my 30s and 40s, you know, my girlfriends are my tribe, and seeing them in the boardroom, understanding this role of, you know, being one of the boys, but actually, how do we bring in that authenticity, that vulnerability, that feminine leadership, where you truly understand who you are, you know, and you live in that space of power, I think is incredible. And that does include feminine and masculine qualities. I think previously, you know, society has kind of put women in a box of femininity and masculinity, but we all possess those qualities.
Yeah,
And I think it's talking about it differently. I think that's really where the starting point is for me. It's to say, I do have feminine qualities, I have masculine
but
qualities, but
also,
what are
yeah,
my strengths? You know, and what is the blend? Because there's a beautiful
integrated.
blend for both of those. Yeah, absolutely. And I think the starting point as well is, you know, understanding, you know, I'm also a strengths coach. We look at, you know, strengths. We do a beautiful assessment and discuss that, and understanding the language of who you are as a person, not as a woman or a man. You know, who are you
As a
and your
person, yeah.
strengths, and what feminine and masculine qualities do you have, and how are you living those out and exercising that in everything that you're doing. So I think it starts with the way we speak about ourselves, and certainly as a mom, how I speak about Lily and speak to her, and model even the journey that I'm going through at the moment. So yeah, I think you know, femininity. It's this idea of also talking about the feminist, but I think that, you know, I'm also trying to portray femininity to my son. You know, how does he understand his feminine qualities, and how can he live that out without feeling the pressure of being the man's man? So
Yeah,
you know, it goes both ways really in that conversation.
beautiful. And I, to touch on that, I really think that, I mean, parents do the best that they can do, right? And also, there's no school for parenting, so there's no wrong parenting or right parenting. They all just
No.
figuring it out, right? But I, speaking on having a boy son and a girl, and the double standards in between, right? How you treat the boy is not necessarily how you will respond to the girl, right? And constantly having to blend the two, which don't really blend, right? Yeah, and speaking on parenting, I know I'm not a parent, but I think it's very important to, as parents, not parent your children how you were parented when you were growing up, right? Because times are changing and things are different, and it sets an an unrealistic expectation on them, right? Because they deal with their own challenges, and they are to grow up and be their own people, and in a different time and a different era. So it's unfair for you to, just because this is how you grew up, therefore you're expecting your kids to follow the same way that you were taught and whatnot. And also, it goes without saying that there's this unspoken expectation of how a woman should be, right? It's very universal and it's unspoken, but we all know that there's this unspoken expectation of how a woman should be, how a woman should behave, how a woman should carry herself, you know. And I think a lot of women carry the pressure, right, of that expectation. And because growing up as a girl, you grow up and it's like subconsciously, like at the back of your mind, you know, this is how I'm supposed to be. And for society to deem me as woman enough and courageous enough or worthy of the title of being woman, I have to carry certain values and behave a certain way and be a certain person, right? Which is unrealistic because I believe we are all different. We are all different individuals, right? We
Absolutely.
we, we possess both feminine and masculine energies. So I'd like to know, do you think that maybe women carry more than they should, all in the name of fulfilling this expectation that's in the air, right? Trying to prove to society and to your family and to friends and to your communities that actually I'm woman, right? I'm worthy of the title of being woman. Do you think that perhaps women carry more than they should?
Yes. I feel like, you mentioned the word worthy, and I feel like as women, we are always asking that question, am I worthy
Yeah.
enough?
Am I worthy
Whether
enough?
that's as a girlfriend or a wife or an employee or an employer, as a mother, that sense of, and that's really where my passion lies in the work that I do, is to fully understand your sense of worthiness. I think there is that filter, there is that subliminal pressure on women to be. It's almost, I thought about it, the pendulum is almost swung from, my mum's generation, where there was very low expectation, in the sense that, you were a certain job that you could fulfill, and that was all that was expected, and that was good enough. I think these days it's almost swung to the extreme of, you need to be operating at a very high level, but you still need to be all those things, fulfilling, the role in the home and the perfect wife and cooking the best meal. Although I'm married to a hubby that's very progressive and certainly not like that. But I think that, and I know certainly with COVID, all those almost those job types that we carry, as the mom with our kiddies and the homework and the cooking and the job that continues. I think that that pressure builds, and I certainly know, for a lot of the women that I'm engaging with at the moment and talking to, there's this big expectation to be able to master it all, and not to show vulnerability,
That's everything.
and
Yeah.
that you're okay all the time. And I don't think that there is that place that there should be, and I think it's certainly developing, where we can say, I'm tired or I need some help. And I think we are seeing a bit of that burnout, because the
Yeah.
women in our generation are just trying to do it all. They're trying to prove to themselves and everyone else that they can do it, that they've got this covered. And I think, again, it starts with a conversation, to say, how do we create that space to be vulnerable, to actually put up our hands and say, I need help. I need help in the house. I need, help at work. I need help as a mum. I think we're so guarded sometimes in sharing our vulnerability, that we live in this little island where we don't actually create the support that we actually need. And I think, again, it starts with a conversation and self-awareness, around this idea of who is putting that pressure on you as well. It's society, but you can change that. You can redefine. You can challenge those self-limiting beliefs. You also spoke about the role that our parents played in that parenting. I certainly know my journey, and definitely as a coach, is challenging those self-limiting beliefs. What do I understand myself to be, and how do I align that to truth? And I think going through that process, it's looking at everything, that we've been taught, which is always a great foundation. But how do we then make it our own? What resonates, and hold on to that, and whatever doesn't resonate with us, that's okay to move on. and actually, keep what we feel is relevant and leave the rest behind. And I certainly know Lily asking me certain questions and challenging me as a mom and a woman is really accelerated that process. But I'm certainly seeing things in her at 11 that, I've only really learned some of those things in my 30s and 40s. And I suppose that's also just part of, the journey of parenthood and being able to, see that reflection of self in that other person. So it's been they say your kiddies are your biggest teachers. So I can certainly
Teachers,
say
yeah.
that Lil's is, but I do certainly, I think that it really does start with self, and asking yourself hard questions about, what were those some self-limiting beliefs and how do you challenge those?
Amazing, beautiful. And I think that it's also important to, adding to what you're saying, it's very important for us to embrace our femininity, right? And not always try to do or show up as, for lack of a better word, as the man would, right? Because I think the reason why we are constantly under pressure and constantly trying to fulfill and be responsible to these expectations is because we're really trying to be what the man is, right? And forget that we have our own purpose and we are our own people, right? And just embracing the femininity as a whole, right? And loving yourself in your strengths and in also realizing your weaknesses, right? And I think an example would be women in leadership positions in any shape or form. You're always between leading as a man or leading as a woman, right? Because it's expected of you to have this masculine energy, right? So that people can respect you, so that people can take you seriously. You have to carry and possess those characteristics of a man. You have to be firm and strong, right? And I think it's really important for us to really just dwell in the femininity that we possess, in our strengths, right? Because I believe that as women we have our own beautiful strengths, and we don't have to be the other for you to excel. You can really just in yeah.
No, I love that. And this idea that you need to be a certain way to make an impact in this world, I think is really the place where we fall down. Unfortunately, I think in business, and I know you particularly in a more masculine, male-dominated
Industry.
world of construction, yeah, absolutely, and we've spoken about this before, is how do you still stay true to self? Because I think,
And not
you
try to be.
entering, yeah, you're entering a space where things have been done a certain way for many years, and you are coming in with your own blend of femininity, understanding the quieter strengths. And I say quiet not as in no voice, but it's the intuitive. It's a lot of the qualities that I think, we talk about the soft skills and the hard skills. I think that the softer skills that have been portrayed as not relevant in the workplace, or the feminine's, qualities and energies, actually is the beautiful balance, of this feminine and masculine energy. And I thought about it as well. In global politics, we saw how certain leaders dealt with COVID, and that feminine leadership with the compassion, the communication, the listening, in relation to some hardline leaders that we won't mention names, but just how I think that the world is opening up to realizing that these previously underestimated softer strengths, which were more kind of boxed in the feminine woman kind of box, actually there's a huge place in corporate, in these sort of male dominated spaces, and actually how that is creating and changing that culture within the workplace. But, I think the pressure on a woman coming into that space is also really standing strong, and valuing, again, that worthiness. Do you
Yeah.
do you value who you are? Do you value what you bring? How do you really? And I see some comments coming through.
Yeah.
You the expectation that comes with wanting to be labeled as worthy shouldn't be something women are to carry around, because that might be us throwing away for someone to live through. The minute we start working towards gaining the title, it's more like someone or society is living through us instead of us living for ourselves. Doubt it's worth it, but hey, that's my 2 cents. Thanks, Sipo Sipo.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think the power really lies in, again, understanding self, and that for me is really the starting point, and not making it a gender conversation, but
Yeah.
really understanding, the power of your strengths, and who you are, and that identity, and then bringing that into any conversation and any, whether it's the workplace, whether it's amongst friends, any platform that you're coming into. I think really your power lies in truly understanding, those strengths and who you are. And there will be that blend of feminine and masculine qualities. So that for me really is something that's really I've certainly seen, and a lot of women coming to that place where they're in the C-suite level, in having to really come with vulnerable leadership, and living from their heart space, and not competing, and not
Yeah.
being someone that they can't be. So that's certainly been something I've that I see as shifting in the
Yeah.
workplace.
Speaking on that, the constantly having to carry the masculine energy and whatnot, how do you define strength for yourself? And how do you continue to find the courage to break through all the stereotypes and break through everything that people say or said to be? How do you continue to, or find the courage to set what is for you, and how do you find, what do you define as strength?
I thought about this question because you and I spoke earlier in the week, and I think, again, almost equate strength to power, and really understanding your power and reclaiming your power as women. I'm seeing that, at the moment. And, for me, that really starts again, from a true understanding of self. I think that, how you live that out really starts from how you really understand, who yourself. And I think that's through doing a lot of, self-awareness. You can do some courses and assessments.
Mindfulness.
Yeah, mindfulness work. But, I think as well, something that has been hugely impactful for me is looking at women a little older than me, seeing where they're at, learning from them, whether that's, crones and older women that I'm being intentional about in terms of what their journey is, what their learnings are. Podcast, I'm a big fan. It's just a place to think. I know we've shared this as well.
Yeah.
Literature, books. I think it really is, a place for you to start asking questions about, again, what was I raised as, and those qualities and that influence, and what resonates with me. What do I want to keep? What do I want to grow on and build on? And what do I want to leave behind? And I think the power and strength really is understanding, being in that space where you are asking those questions, creating a tribe that you can, soundboard with, women and men in your life, those people that you choose intentionally, to challenge these self-limiting beliefs. Professionals, there are so many incredible resources to look to really understand, this sense of self. But I really think this idea of power, previously again, has been portrayed, in a very masculine way. So when we talk about power, words are also connected to, I think, certain preconceived ideas. Power, overbearing, strong, but actually power could be, in a very different way. And how do we live that out and understand that for ourselves? And I don't think it looks the same for everyone. I think the way that we live out and act out that power and strength is really, dependent on that place of understanding self. It might be being the best construction and QS, running your own company. It could be in a much, quite a different way. But the point is, I think it just really starts with redefining power by understanding, self. And through the strengths work that I've done, I've really seen this unlocking through language of understanding self, better, and working with yourselves and some of the ladies when we were doing some of those sessions. I think again, it's saying, what are those self-limiting beliefs? Who do I believe I am to be? And then aligning that to what is actually the truth and what is the reality I'm trying to create for myself. So I think we need to use different words. We need to challenge, those words and ideas we have of those.
Yeah. I think there's also power and strength in letting go and not trying to do everything because you want to be this strong, successful person. And just deciding sometimes that, you know what, okay, it's fine. I'm letting go and I'm deciding to let it be, right? And stop the constant fight all the time. You're fighting, you're busy with this, with that, and you want everything at the same time. Yeah, and closing off.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, I wanted to say on that point, again, and I think this has really been my journey, is to say, who am I doing this for?
Yeah.
We talk about the stereotypes. Who's putting that pressure on me? Who, again, there's always, I think, a place for us to be able to, in that place of strength and power, to say, I'm choosing to let that
Myself.
be, part of my reality. But I think sometimes we create that sense of pressure for ourselves. And I think it really starts with us to say, I'm not living up to that expectation, whether that's what my parents have placed on me as the good girl, the daughter, or, a partner in my life, or my employer, and really kind of challenging those kind of preconceived ideas. And that's where, that sense of having a tribe and soundboarding with other women, I think is incredibly important in really being able to understand that and challenge that.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And I'd like to, I mean, most of the times when girls are spoken to, when young girls are spoken to, it's always about it's always about the motivational talk. You should find your own voice, cement yourself, find your power. And I feel like many times we get lost in finding that power, right? Because there are no guidelines and there are no practical steps that you're given for us to navigate in finding our voices and finding our power and just finding our firm stand in who we are, right? What would you what would you be the give as guidelines, if I may say, to young girls out there, girls like me, in cementing themselves and in finding their voices and in standing firm in who they are? What would you advise or steps or guidelines that you would give to them?
Thank you. This is a beautiful question, and it was actually something we did in some of the work that we did, was actually speaking to role models and saying, what would that advice be? What would you do? And I think something that was incredible that came out of that and certainly has resonated in my own life is this, again, I cannot underestimate or, stress enough this idea of surrounding yourself with a tribe. I almost feel like we come through, growing up as a little girl. We have this role modeling that we have, and then we're stepping into the world, and it's this kind of scary, open, new place. I certainly know, in those 20s and 30s, there was a place of almost kind of not dissociating from family, but really kind of trying to understand my identity as a young woman, and the value, yes, of surrounding yourself intentionally, I think, with a tribe. And we've spoken about this before as well. And really looking at, and I'm not talking about 5 or 6 or 10 people. It could be 1 or 2 really influential people that you can seek out, that you can learn from, that you can ask questions. Be intentional about it again. Look at, who they are, what have they done, what do they value, and how does that resonate with what I value? And I think sometimes that's where we see we grow up and certain friendships fall by the wayside, because we change and we grow, and things we valued maybe when we were 19 or 20 is different to when we're 25 or 30, and that's okay. I think there's an evolution in self. But really, kind of my one point that I would say is be intentional about finding those people and surrounding yourself with incredible, women, particularly because we're on this topic of stereotypes and femininity, that really emulate who you, your values and what you see for yourself in 5 or 10 years' time. Again, we were talking about those resources. There are so many incredible resources available through, podcasting and, Weave Woman, exactly. So, use those. They're there, they're available. Women are having these kinds of conversations. Create that time for mindfulness. I think that there's really, really kind of undervalued in the time that we need to have the time to think. So I think that would be a huge one for me. And it's really, then creating that quiet time for yourself. I think whatever that looks like, whether that is running in the mountain or, walking your dog or going to the movies by yourself or having a coffee or journaling, is also have think time. There's input, and then there's time to just think about, what do you want? What do you value? What do you want for yourself? And I think that blend of influence is incredibly powerful. Certainly has been the birthplace for a lot of change in my life. So Siamtanda says, right, we really do get lost in finding that power. Yeah, absolutely. Asemahle, we can't hear you again. I don't know why it's just dropped. Maybe just to log in and log out again. Can't hear you now. I don't know if it's just me. Maybe log in, log out. Those tech gremlins are back. Yes. Okay. Thank you. And thanks to everyone for those incredible comments and questions. Maybe while Asemahle is dialing in again, if there are any more of those that anyone wants to post or questions to pose, I'm not sure how much time we actually have left, but always open to hearing what are you saying? What is, what are your thoughts on all these different topics that we've been speaking about? Because there've been some really good thinking points that have come through while we were chatting. So we'd love to hear from the audience, from every one of you. If anyone wants to pop in anything in the comments section. Yeah, there have been some beautiful comments here around power, worthiness. Okay, let's have a look here. So I think Asemahle is just needing to be added back to the conversation. Not sure about that from a technical point of view.
Am I audible now?
Yes, I can hear you.
I think we have a question. What advice has been instrumental in your development as a woman? That's a beautiful question.
Sure. Advice that I've been given.
That has been instrumental. Yeah.
Sure. I'm trying to think where to even start in all the incredible advice that I've been given. Again, I think it comes back to fully understanding your role and your power through your voice, through your strengths. I think my journey of growth around, and I'm thinking about, these incredible women that I've built into my life, of really kind of encouraging me to step forward and understand and redefine that idea of femininity, because of, maybe what's been modeled and shown to me as a young girl, but really just to, trust my heart, believe in myself, step forward with who I know I am and who others saw me to be. And I think it really, again, that advice of surrounding yourself with other incredible women that can really see things that you don't sometimes see. I think sometimes we're stuck in our heads, and we blind spotted. So I think the advice around being who I am and stepping forward when I'm feeling less courageous has really been incredible in changing the way I've thought about myself. And maybe that question to you, Asemahle,
To me.
what is the advice that you receive?
Oh, wow. I think more than anything, it's believing in yourself. And I truly believe that if you don't believe in yourself, no one will, right? And it's in situations where you feel like you don't belong and you are overwhelmed and you imposter syndrome and you feel like, oh my gosh, I can't. Constantly reminding yourself you need to be brave and you need to believe in yourself and that you can do anything, right? Anything you set your mind to, and just believing that you're worthy. Being worthy for me, you don't have to, for you to qualify as worthy, you don't have to have done certain things before or have acquired particular things. You're worthy because you're alive and you're human, right? So just believing, constantly believing and reminding yourself that you can do it, you're brave and you're worthy. Yeah, and that brings us to the end.
Oh,
It's really been beautiful, really
I've
been
loved
amazing,
it.
and yeah.
Someone said in the comments, she said here, the host has such beautiful questions, amazing. And Asemahle, I've known you, I feel like many years, and I've said this to you before, I feel like you are so much older in the way that you think about the world and the questions and the way that you live your life. I'm so inspired by you and who you are and the world that you are changing around you. So it really has been an incredible privilege to be in this conversation with you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Sisipo said we need more programs on developing the mind for young ladies to think beyond what they know or see. We tend to be stuck or compressed by circumstances at times where we only think about around where we are at that specific moment. But then again, it goes back to who you surround yourself with and how they are to equip you for the future or the path. Absolutely. Thank you. That's just like summed it all up beautifully. Sometimes you just have to close your eyes and dive into the ocean. Who knows? Maybe the shark's teeth are those of a 6-year-old. Gone. I love that.
I'm
Thank you.
really happy and I'm really grateful that this happened. And you know, I was nervous the entire time. It's like, oh my gosh, I don't want to mess it up. And I'm really happy. And for me, and I always say this to you, and I always say this to you, that you are really someone that you are a destiny helper. You may see it, you might not see it, but I really think that the work that you've done in the lives of the women that you've touched, that you didn't have to touch. And I think many times when people do the work, they focus on the practical things, right? Providing you with what you need and then just leaving you to discover it for yourself and just find your way out. But with you, you've always been intentional in taking one's hand and just really being there on their journeys and just really guiding them throughout, right? And girl, people, you've changed people's lives, whether you see
No,
it now or you
thank you.
don't. But I really, and it really touches my heart, and it really, it shows the kind of person that you are, and the work that we are able to do in the, like, it's not limited to anything that we are used to, right?
Absolutely.
And I'm really happy that
Absolutely.
this happened. And
Thank
yeah,
you.
man, I really, the message is really for women to be and to bask and to just entirely be who they are in their femininity. You don't have to be anything that you're not for people to see you or deem you as worthy or as human
100%.
enough, right? Just
You
once
are
to
enough.
take it in, you are enough. And it's in the way we laugh, it's in the way we live, it's in the way we love, it's in the way we lead, right? That's where our power lies. We don't have to be anything that we're not. And I like to say that to the queens and the powerful queens that have come before us, is that we may we know them, may we be them, and may we raise them. Thank you so much.
I
Thank you.
love
It
it.
was nice.
Thank you, Asemahle. Thank you to everyone.
And thank you to everyone watching.